Thank you. As a preliminary matter, this is Brian Sullivan, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Penny Dye.
Here.
Tom Dixon.
Here.
Rima Sherry.
Here.
Dave Iverson. He's still connecting. There he is. Dave Iverson.
Yes, no, maybe so.
There you go. Excellent. Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ellis.
Here.
Tucker.
Here.
Sorry, I just saw.
That's really nice, Brian.
Yeah. Hi, Dave. Your hair and my hair are just alike today.
I have hair today.
Vicky Marsh. There you go. Anticipated speakers on the agenda. I don't know that I have any that I'm going to run through. Moving down, good afternoon. This is an open meeting. The Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. The meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening via video conference via the Zoom app is posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note the meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating by a video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless otherwise noted. We'll turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business. And to ensure accurate meeting minutes, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, we'll go down a line of members, inviting each to participate, comment with questions or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote will be taken, conducted by a roll call. So with that, we'll turn to the agenda. Where did the agenda go? Thought I had it open. Okay, does anybody have any comments on the agenda, changes, edits? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion. Penny?
Yeah, I think, aren't we taking something off of here, Tucker?
Nothing off, but
Okay.
yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
In a second?
Second.
Second from Dave by roll call. Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. We have meeting minutes from the November 14th meeting. Are there any edits, changes, comments?
No, the meeting, the minutes will be at the November 14th.
Oh,
Yep.
I read that wrong. We couldn't have them. Forgive me. It's only October 31st. Happy Halloween. It's not April Fool's Day. Okay, moving on. Public comment. Are there any members of the public or any members of the board as members of the public for comment today? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. I will move to item 5, closing cost assistance. The first application, Dion, forgive me, it's can you pronounce your last name for me?
Brusevich.
Brusevich.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
We have an application for Dion and her family for 4 Blue Court. Are there any questions for her, comments or thoughts? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion on the application.
I'll make a motion to approve the application for the Slewitz.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from, we'll give that one to Tom. Vote by roll call. Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's and I. Congratulations on getting the lottery and the closing cost assistance. Good luck
Thank
to
you
your
all.
closing.
We're
Have a
very
great
happy.
Christmas in that house. I hope you guys are we be in there by then?
We hope so.
Great. Excellent.
Thank
Well,
you.
You're welcome to stay, but don't feel obligated.
Okay.
The next application is for 3 Lilac Court. Is the applicant here, Shelley? I don't see, are there any questions, comments for staff on the application? Seeing none, is there a motion on the application?
I'll move to approve.
In a second?
I'll second. I have to say, Dave, you look just like my mother with the hair.
Again, back to April Fools.
It could go either way, April Fools or Halloween.
So we have a motion from Dave to approve and a second from Penny by roll call. Tom Dixon?
Second with discussion on that. Yes. Aye.
Yes. Penny Dye?
Yes, aye.
Rima Sherry?
Aye.
Dave Iverson?
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's and I. Great. Well, those are exciting to do. And it was exciting to read those applications and see people getting into these houses. So that was a long haul for Richmond to get there for those 2 units. So I'm excited to see people in there for the near future. 2023 special town meeting articles discussion. So this agenda item, Tucker, do you have commentary that you want to kind of lead this on, or?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Not particularly. We just wanted to give the board the opportunity to have a discussion about any article that they felt important to discuss in advance of the special town meeting next week. I think you've noted, Mr. Chair, that one of the articles does deal with a funding source for housing, so that may be one we want to speak a little bit about.
Yeah, I think that's worth chatting about. And Tom, I apologize, I mean to put you on the spot because I haven't chatted with you about it, but the select board put forth an article to add the community impact fee onto STRs and to have that funding go exclusively to affordable housing, if I understand that correctly.
Yes, that's almost exactly what happened. So per the short-term rental work group's deliberations, something that we decided, meaning we reached consensus on, which was 7 to 9 of us, was to add a separate article per town council. The adoption of the community impact fee cannot be in the general bylaw. It must be a standalone warrant article, was to include that in our package of recommendations to go to the select board. The select board did agree, did affirm the warrant, and the community impact fee is on there. The short-term rental work group's recommendation was that 100% of the revenue of the state's definition of professionally managed units would go to affordable housing. It's only required that 35% go to for affordable housing or infrastructure. The short-term rental work group felt that it should be 100%. Select board agreed, and therefore it is an article for a stabilization fund. So I think that on town meeting floor, my guess is that there'll probably be, if it's called, there'll be a question on potential revenue. And my guess is that Finance Director Brian Turbott will have some revenue projections for that if that's an inquiry on the floor. But yeah, that's a little bit on the history on where that came from.
And if do I understand correctly that a stabilization fund is voted out at each annual fund for use, or each annual town meeting for use?
Yes.
I see Vicky. Okay, great. Cool. Awesome. Rima?
Yeah, my question was, Tom, you had mentioned that this would be the funds from professionally managed STRs, but it looks like the select board doesn't have that part in, so now are we at 100% of revenue or just revenue from professionally managed? And how would that
So
be determined?
yeah, so the community impact fee is from the state enabling legislation. So that's part of that statute. And the community impact fee, the 3%, is only on professionally managed units.
Okay, thanks.
Penny?
And just to clarify, Tom, could you confirm that it's to be paid by the owner, not the tenant?
Vicky, do you know that off the top of your head? I can look it up real quick.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's on the owners, because otherwise we're looking at a 14.7% rental tax here on the tenant.
Well, technically, Penny, the 11.7% is paid for by the owner. It's passing through to
Yes.
the tenant as a luxury-based fee, but technically
Understood.
it's,
I understand that, but the tenant is paying it to the owner.
right.
Well, it's immaterial for this meeting. We don't need to wait to get that. I can look it up.
Yeah, that's correct, Penny.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Just want to make sure.
Are there more? Tucker, I see you have your hand up.
I just was going to mention that the finance committee motion is in favor of the article at the 100% going into the fund.
Great. Excellent. And this is is this 3 or 4?
3 and 4. 4 is the stabilization fund.
Okay. Any other questions related to these articles 3 and 4? Tucker?
I mean, does the board want to take a formal position on these? Like, do we want to be able to say that the trust supports these 2 articles?
It,
Go ahead, Penny.
I just think in the past, haven't we not taken positions, or have we?
I think we have
Yes.
not taken positions on citizen articles as a general policy, but we may have taken positions on town-sponsored articles, if I remember correctly.
You're
I
correct.
just don't remember. Okay.
Is there a feeling from the board? Rima gave me a thumbs up. Do we want to take a vote? Do we want to? Does anybody want to make a motion, Tucker?
Well, I mean, I just was going to say, I mean, I think, the select board has been, very supportive of our work. I appreciate them including this on the warrant. I think if we were to show our support for this measure, it would, in my opinion, it would be appropriate.
Tom, it's 3.5%,
It's 3%.
3%. So it's
Mr. Chair, would you like me to read, just so everyone's on the same page, of what the definition of a professionally managed unit is?
that, yes. And just so I understand clearly, the existing revenue that's generated, this will be an additional 50% of the total revenue. Is that right? Because we're collecting 6 locally now, or 5.7 locally.
5.7.
5.7. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going off track. It wasn't necessarily important. Tom, yes, please.
Okay, so the fee applies to short-term rentals that are one of 2 or more short-term rentals located in this case, Nantucket, have the same operator, or are not located in an owner-occupied single-family, 2-family, or 3-family dwelling. So when we did, I don't take these numbers as gospel, but when we had Process First, Matt Haffenreffer do the data study for the short-term rental work group, if I remember correctly, Nantucket's of the rentals that were identified under Matt's work, there was about 15% of our identified short-term rentals. Is that right, Penny? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I believe that's the case. And
Just to give a ballpark.
just to further clarify, it's only for those who own multiple properties.
And they're only paying on one of those properties, right? Is that what you read? Tom?
Uh, Pardon, I closed it.
I'm holding Tom for you to reopen and address Dave.
Okay. Yeah, it says the fee applies to short-term rentals that are one of two or more short-term rentals that are located in Nantucket, have the same operator, are not located in owner-occupied single-family, two-family, or three-family dwelling. The 3% community impact fee does not apply to owners who rent a single unit, licensed businesses, or owners who rent one or two units from a property listed as the owner's primary residence. Just for a clarification's sake, that's from the Provincetown page, because they adopted the community impact fee not at their special town meeting, which was last week, which they adopted short-term rental regulations actually, but at their annual town meeting in last spring.
Thank you, Tom. I'm a little confused. I apologize, but it's not clear in my head. You're saying one or more units, but it only applies to people with more than one unit. Is it if you have one, or is it if you have two?
You have to have two.
Okay. Got it.
And it can't be owner occupied either.
Right.
Just
Any?
Yeah, just to
ahead, Penny.
clarify, this has actually been, as Tom mentioned, in the state legislation that passed in 2019. And Nantucket has not elected to impose this until now. So this is nothing new. I mean, it's new in that if it gets voted in, it's new. But we've had the option as a community to do this for the last almost 4 years. Thank you.
Right. Meg?
Tom, what was, or through you, Brian, to Tom, what was the middle qualification of licensed business?
Yeah, this is kind of the problem with doing this on the fly. I think it's better if I go into the MGL and look at it. Can we move on? We can come back to this, and I'll kind of do a sidebar, and
Yeah,
I'll put something
happy
in
to.
that we can all read together.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay.
So with that, we'll keep this open. Let's see, that's item 6. Are there other articles listed that anybody wants to talk about, or Tucker, you believe are important to bring up?
That was the principal one. For me, it's really up to the trust members if they would like to discuss any other articles.
Okay, that was the principal one for me as well. Does anybody else have any? I'm seeing no's. Okay, so we'll keep this item open. We'll come back to it later in the meeting. We'll move to item number 7, Affordable Homes Act update. Tucker, a lot has been happening since the last time we've met. Will you update the group and the public, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think the group is aware that the governor, lieutenant governor, and secretary of housing have proposed the Affordable Homes Act legislation. It's a omnibus bill with kind of sweeping positive implications, in my opinion. It's a over $4 billion proposal. It's a bonding bill, but it has a lot of policy recommendations and actions incorporated into it, two of which are of particular interest, again, in my opinion, to us here in Nantucket. One is the incorporation of a transfer fee on real estate sales for housing, our, in effect, our long sought after housing bank option. The governor's bill is a little different than what we have been proposing in our home rule petition. The main item, I guess two main items are, one, that it proposes a threshold of $1 million or the median home price in a community, whatever is greater. And so, I believe that the current median home price in Nantucket is around $3 million. So, were this to be in effect today, we would have a higher threshold than we originally had proposed. In our case, we have options. As everyone knows, we started at 0.5% in our original proposal on amounts over 2 million. The legislation the governor has proposed allows communities, again, if enacted, the opportunity to set a fee between 0.5% and up to 2%. So we can turn the dial if we so choose as a community to make up for the, so to speak, lost revenue. I've had a chance to reach out to the land bank. They very nicely have put together an analysis of if the transfer fee had been in effect under our home rule petition over the last 12 months, it would have generated approximately $4 million. With this new threshold, as proposed by the governor, over that same period, we would have lost, not changing the percentage, about 25% of the revenue, or we would have brought in $3 million. So this is something not necessarily for today, but something that we are going to want to think about between now and when the select board needs to adopt the town meeting warrant. Any changes to our home rule petition to comport with what we are going to understand the governor's bill to be, and our desires with respect to revenue. Ultimately, it's a decision of the select board what goes on to the warrant. And the other area that isn't necessarily incorporated into the governor's bill that we, just need to understand whether we could include under our own version, if you will, opting into a program that was approved, is, we did have a sunset associated with our original measure. So there are things still to investigate and understand about how what the governor is proposing would mesh with what we're trying to do. Obviously, the governor's bill is going to have to go through a rigorous process in the legislature. This is not a done deal that the governor has proposed it, although it is game changing. I mean, just hugely helpful. But, the administration is relying on all of us who are interested in having this tool available to really be part of the effort to get it through the legislature and onto her desk. The other part in the bill is of particular interest to us is the inclusion of a seasonal communities designation. This is something that we had talked to the secretary about initially at the beginning of August, that seasonal communities have particular circumstances that aren't necessarily evident in other communities. And we talked about a couple of different examples with the secretary. One was around 40B, for example. I think people can imagine if a 40B project is done in the Metro Boston area, obviously 25% of the units are restricted to 80% AMI by law. And even if the remainder of the units in a project in Newton, for example, are market rate, by and large, you would expect that those units are going to people who live and work in the area. That just isn't true in a seasonal community like Nantucket, where, we know from history that, the 80% AMI units in a 40B project here, might be selling for 280,000, and the market rate units in the same development are selling for 1.5 to 2 million. Those market rate units, by and large, are not going to year-round residents. So 40B, we think maybe should operate in a little bit different way in a seasonal community. Similarly, seasonal communities have particular challenges in housing municipal employees, and obviously municipal employees are required to perform a certain number of services to a community, and therefore maybe greater latitude around using funds for municipal employee housing is something that could be considered. So the seasonal communities designation is not defined yet, and there will be a work group put together to put meat on the bones, but we're very pleased and grateful again that the administration recognized that seasonal communities have special challenges and there perhaps should be some special consideration for those communities.
Thank you, Tucker. Yes, Penny?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that how this ends up being implemented on Nantucket is going to be up to town meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Penny. Any other questions or comments for Tucker? Seeing none, Tom, are you ready to go back, or do you want me to jump to the next one?
I am, but the chat is not enabled. And I was going to message it to Ellis, but that's not enabled either. So I don't know if I have.
I'll make you a co-host here, Tom. Do you want to screen share this or?
Sure, one sec. Okay. Okay, does everyone see that? Tucker, can I see that? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So right here is the state's definition, or on their room occupancy excise tax page on the community impact fee. So it's the definition, the state's definition of professionally managed units, which is right here. And then on the bottom here, the separate vote for cities and towns, we decided we could have included that, but since Nantucket doesn't have a lot of 2 and 3 family dwellings, we did not include that in the STRWG's recommendations, nor the select board.
Meg, does this cover your question that you had?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Great. Tom, thank you for pulling this up and sharing it. Are there more questions coming back on Article 3 and 4 or the collection of the impact fee or potential revenue? Seeing none, I think, oh, go ahead, Meg.
So just to clarify, the way I'm understanding this is that we could impose this fee on each of these units in which they're professionally managed and there's 2 or more. Yes, or you can only impose it on one. I mean, it doesn't really change my opinion about the matter, but I thought that was brought up earlier and I just wanted to clarify.
I believe it's the ownership. If you own 2 or more and you rent one of them, then the community impact fee applies. Penny, does that sound right? Okay.
Getting an affirmative head shake from Penny, yes.
Correct.
Whether we support it or
Vicky?
not is different, but just so we're clear.
So it looked, oh, I lost the share. It looked to me that I just lost, I lost.
There it
the
is.
share. It looked to me that here, hang on one second. That one of 2, so the units are both short term. Say you have 2 or more. They're both short-term rentals. It's not just one is a short-term rental and one is not. They're more than one short-term rental units, but only one is going to get assessed the fee.
Penny?
Presumably the other one is owner occupied and exempt.
Dave?
Through you, if they had 3, wouldn't 2 of them be taxed?
Yes,
But not so that they
Not
get
the
a
first one.
freebie and then everyone after that gets taxed. Is that how that's read?
One of 2 or more. One of 2 or more.
Or is
It looks
that
like
just the
one of-
definition of
It looks like one of multiple, the way
right.
I'm reading this. So you could have 5 and only the first one. One of 2 or more.
Right.
I'm not sure I'm reading it that way. I would
But
think
it's-
that if someone had like 5 rental units on the island, each one taken individually would be qualified. Is it one of 2 or more short-term rentals, then it's eligible for the impact fee.
we're getting caught up is this one of 2 or more just lives in the definition of professionally managed, right? It doesn't really go to as who is charged.
Yeah, I think it's based on ownership. It's not if you own 2 or more and you short-term rent, then you're subject to the 3% community impact fee based on the state's definition of a professionally managed unit.
Right.
Rima?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could do a sense of the meeting to authorize Tucker to say that we support this, or that, if we don't, but I think that it would be helpful for town meeting to hear that we do, support the select board's efforts to increase our funding in this way.
Do you want to do a sense of the meeting or do you want to make a motion?
Well, it's not an action item, so I thought it's more appropriate to do a sense of the meeting.
That's fair. So with that, we'll look to take a vote for the sense of the meeting in supporting the select board's motion as presented in the warrant. That, Rima, that a summary of what you're requesting?
That's where I'm going.
Okay.
Do you want to
So,
make it?
I guess
Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead,
Brent.
Tucker.
Do you want to make it the select board or the finance committee's motion?
I guess it's the finance committee's motion on the select
Finance
board's article.
committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, look, well, I'll take a sense by roll. Tom Dixon,
Aye.
support it and do
Oh,
we
support.
support?
Right.
Yeah.
Support.
Support, okay. Penny, Di,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
I support it.
Dave Iverson,
In support.
Meg Browers,
In support.
and Brian Sullivan supports the motion as well. Great.
Thank
So
you.
we can put that at a town meeting. Thank you, Rima, for bringing that to a point. I appreciate the assistance on that one.
Well,
So
and
with that,
oh, sorry, Brent.
go ahead, Tucker.
I'm just going to add that, thank you all for that. I mean, in addition to, supporting, this, move by the select board and generating additional funding potentially, I think this is an important thing to be able to talk about with regard to the transfer fee, in State House and other discussions, that really truly Nantucket is using every tool that it has available to it. And therefore but it's collectively not enough, which is why we need the transfer fee.
Well said, Tucker. Thank you. With that, Judy was on. Judy, are you still in the background there? There you are. We will close item 6 and open item 8, year-round deed restriction focus group update. On the edge of my seat to hear from you, Judy. You're on mute, sorry.
So I just saw that. That was a wild experience. It was 9 meetings in, I don't know, a week. It was 7 days, something like that. It was crazy. So I did speak with all the groups you asked me to. There were a few people who missed the times they were assigned to. I did one like a catch-up meeting for people who missed. I probably should have done a second one. Frankly, by the time I finished the 9th meeting, my brain was dead. So I thought, well, Tucker and I we had talked about doing a community meeting anyway, which I think is kind of what we need to talk about today, because we need to make sure the schedule on that. But I want to just give you kind of a rundown of what I heard. Because some of it I wasn't surprised by, and some of it I sort of was. People were split on how to define, I'm just looking at the questions I asked, how to define a year-round resident. There were people who thought, 6 months and a day. There were people who said, given what this program is supposed to do, they should live here for 12 months, barring a, absence for a vacation. There were a few people who were familiar with the definition in Senator Sears' bill, but I would just say generally the sense I got was that people really wanted this to be truly year-round, not people who had the means, frankly, to be able to travel off island for a significant part of the year. So just take that for what it's worth. There was a mix of opinions about what we want to do with this program. So I would say more than half the people I spoke with wanted to see this mainly as a vehicle to support home ownership. But I don't want to suggest that there was very little concern about rental. I heard a lot of concern about rental. But I think, push comes to shove, like, what do we really want this program to accomplish? I think more than half the people I spoke with seemed to think that home ownership was really the main goal. And, the arguments were around things I think we would not be surprised by, which is home ownership helps people get an anchor in the community. It encourages them to stay. It gives people kind of a raison d'etre for being here. So I would say there was a general understanding that ownership was probably the main objective. But there were people who were asking about the Act Now program, which I admittedly am not all that up to speed on. And I didn't want to go there So I would just say there were folks who were interested to know how that might turn out, how that might work out. And would this program somehow have room to accommodate a piece like that? People seemed, we talked a little bit about like, oh, did you have a question? I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. I can't
No,
see you.
I sorry, that was kind of a late draw on my point. I guess I do have a question on when the home ownership aspect and how people saw this as a tool to ownership is
Because I think
is
they
my
saw
question.
the ability to buy a house that would have a deed restriction on it, that it would
Okay.
make a unit affordable in however we're going to define that to someone who qualifies as a year-round resident.
Okay. So they
That's
see it
what
as
they-
a secondary market, a
They
more
did.
affordable option.
Without using
Okay.
those words, they did.
Okay.
There was some concern about, well, how do I say this? There were a few people in the meetings who are existing homeowners who thought they might want to participate as someone who would sell some of their share of their ownership and perhaps be able to stay in the house. And that raised a whole discussion about, well, how long could somebody stay in the house? And now, mind you, I wasn't trying to pitch a particular program description because I didn't think that was my job. I was trying to find out what people thought the program should do. So that raised a discussion in this particular interview I'm thinking of, as well as another one about, well, gosh, could someone sell a share of their ownership, and that enables them to stay in their home as opposed to being displaced. But then have we really created a unit for a year-round worker to stay here? So I want to just sensitize you to that. I think there was a desire both to help people who are there who may be struggling, but also to make sure that we achieve the objective of what people thought the program was, which was to stop the situation where people can't take a job on Nantucket because they can't find a place to live. So this is an example of where I think we're all going to have some interesting discussions about this. Again, I was trying not to pitch a particular approach. I didn't think that would be fair. I'm kind of bringing back to you the concerns or the questions that I heard. We talked about, so how do we know someone's eligible to be a year-round person? And, people had some fairly, I think, good answers to that. Although interestingly, a lot of people talked about, well, you'd have a tax bill. Well, not if you don't own a home now and you're trying to buy a house. So, but I think people kind of figured driver's license, utility bill or something, or evidence that you're working certainly would be an example of kind of criteria that would be reasonable and probably documentable. There was a lot of discussion, I would say, in probably every one of these groups about how are we going to monitor this? Who's going to enforce it? And I think to almost to a person, people said Nantucket is terrible at enforcement. We have problems enforcing existing affordable housing restrictions. How are we ever going to be able to enforce this? Now, that said, that didn't become such a concern that people thought this was a bad idea. I just want you to know, I think it was a little bit of a reflection of, we know Nantucket and the town just doesn't enforce. So, there was, I think, almost a resignation to the idea that, there might be some issues with, for example, if someone's supposed to be a year-round person living on the island, say 11 months out of the year, but now you find out that actually they're not. How do you enforce? Is the town going to, go after somebody and make them sell the house that they bought as a year-round person? I mean, those were questions that came up, and I think you ought to just know. I can't say it was a deal breaker in people's minds, but it generally evoked a fair amount of laughter that the island's not going to enforce these things. They're not going to be able to enforce them. They won't have the will to enforce it. I'm just giving you feedback. I think it's a perception of local government as much as anything, So we talk about, different types of housing product that people might be, what would sort of make sense. A lot of people talk about detached single family homes are important on Nantucket. That's kind of what everybody wants. But, to be able to buy, to have a year-round restricted unit in a condominium development in, attached single family or some type of multifamily structure. I think everybody felt like the goal here is to house people who want to be here and stay here year round. And so the type of structure itself isn't all that important. It may matter to some people, but in the larger scheme of things, it's not a deal breaker. We talked about whether employers should have a place in this program for perhaps having some type of incentive or encouragement to create housing for their year-round employees. And the two ways that could manifest itself, one being someone who truly is living there year-round versus an employer who has a need for year-round employment, but not necessarily people who are there year-round. So there was sort of talk about those different ways that an employer might have needs for year-round housing. But defining year-round from an employer's perspective might be a little bit different. I don't know if I'm making sense, but there was some discussion about that. And although a few people thought some type of approach to helping employers create year-round housing is a good idea, I don't really think anybody thought this program was the vehicle to do it. I think there was a sense of, we don't want to make this thing so complicated, have so many nuances to it, that now it becomes another impossible program to administer. So, I think in a nutshell, what I heard was year-round needs to mean year-round. There's got to be some way to know if we are investing public resources into essentially buying down a percentage of someone's equity so that now we have got this unit that we're going to have a year-round restriction on, that it's not going to be occupied by the existing owner for 20 years. And now we don't really create a unit for someone who wants to work on the island year-round. There was a sense that town employees, and I think there was a lot of sense that town employees are really the crisis. How do I say this? I think there's an awareness that there's a problem for the town and the schools hiring and keeping people. So when we talked about kind of what are the sort of priority needs to address, there was a lot of consciousness of that. But I think the more people talked, it was like, you got to think about the kinds of jobs a community needs. It needs healthcare people. It needs landscapers. It needs electricians. It needs, the full spectrum of folks who make a community what it is. So in the end, I would have to say, I think if there was some type of priority for town employees, if that were possible, that would be resonant for people, but I don't think I didn't get the sense that they thought that was really necessary. There was a lot of awareness of what does it take to have a community and all the different sorts of roles that people play in being part of a community on a year-round basis. So I don't know if that helps you, but I thought they were pretty helpful. I think the people I spoke with, for the most part, were pretty aware of what's going on. Many of them had seen the Veil and Deed presentation, not all of them. I tried really hard not to say I'm selling the Veil and Deed program on Nantucket because I didn't want to give people that impression. And I think they got that. But there was definitely awareness of that, which I thought was good. So with those kind of interviews aside, and the other thing I want to tell you is I asked everybody, I may want to come back to you, early December or something with kind of the framework for what we're thinking the trust wants to do. Would you give me a little more of your time to perhaps react to that program design and give us some feedback? And to a person, everybody said yes. So there was definitely interest in this. I thought that was great. Beyond the interviews, Tucker and I talked about doing just a community meeting, which is a way for people who couldn't participate in an interview or didn't get an invitation to one to be able to speak as well. And we were looking at November 13th. I'm just wondering, does this give us enough time? I know there's an urgency to get this done. I am available on November 13th to do a community meeting. I think we need to have one for transparency's sake. I guess I'd like to get some input from you guys around the schedule. I know there's other stuff going on in Nantucket right now, and we don't want to get on this side of that, but you know, I'm wondering what you think.
Judy, what time of day would you be considering?
Well, Tucker, didn't we talk about like a 5:30 or 6 o'clock type time frame? I would have to
Right.
do this remotely. There's just no way I can travel right now to Nantucket and get back. My schedule is just out of control, but I certainly can do a meeting.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure it was a kind of a post-workday opportunity for people.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I blocked out
Great.
that evening for you guys after Tucker and I spoke.
Penny, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, just through you to Judy, thank you so much for this. I find this really, really helpful and interesting. I wanted to ask on this subsequent meeting, would the goal be to sort of just get more input from people that weren't able to participate?
I think we should do the community. If they want to join the community meeting, they can. I think I'm going to ask very similar questions, Penny.
That's what I was asking.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I think we should just really try to stick with those core questions. I might want to tailor them, maybe reword a few, or maybe add something else based on what I heard in the interviews. But I think this core subject matter is what we need to cover.
That's great. And then this is just a procedural administrative thing. I want to make sure that we thank the people that have participated so far.
Yeah,
Tucker.
yeah. I was going to get you the list. I'm sorry. I should have done that by today. And it's just, I didn't
It's
get to
okay.
it, but I will.
Yep,
I have,
Thank you.
That's
I have a
okay.
good record.
Thank you.
As the focus groups were an opportunity for people, do you see the members of the board joining the community meeting and participating, or is it more like a focus group with a larger group?
I think it would be helpful if you did join the meeting. Whether you participate, you know, in some ways, I feel like this is an opportunity for you maybe to seek clarification on something that perhaps I didn't ask. You know, I know in particular, Brian, you have an interest in the sort of the how much do we need to spend? You know, how much do we need to put down in order to secure a restriction? And what does that dollar amount mean to the person who's going to convey it versus the town of Nantucket? Are people going to freak out about a particular dollar amount? I mean, I think at some point, maybe you want to get a little more into that than I did. And part of I mean, I did try to get at the sort of what economics are going to make sense, but most people in these interviews really were not in a position to answer that question. And even the real estate folks I spoke with, they just didn't go there much. So you guys might want to be in a position to ask some follow-up questions on it. I think the trust being visible on this is great, but I think for the focus groups, it was better that you were not there.
Got it. Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I think just kind of taking in some of Judy's comments, I think there's concerns that people think this is a short-term fix to a problem, when I see it as just the opposite, a much longer term fix, and that people are more worried about whether we're giving someone money and they're staying in that house for 10 years or more, which is problematic. But in the end, that house is part of the program. So I just think that a community meeting would help kind of flush those things out, as well as the ability to enforce the year-round definition. I mean, I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and either they're mine or the public's, I'm not sure, but I think it needs to be flushed out. And I think it's important that this is looked at as a long-term program that will have long-term benefits. Sure, maybe we'll reap some benefit in early on, but I see this as more of a long-term project to secure houses in perpetuity. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. I tend to agree with you. And I think the person that stays in the house is also a community member. And that's the
Right.
goal.
Right. I don't
No
disagree
matter
with
what their
that.
situation is, that,
Yeah.
yeah. Tucker?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think ultimately, it's important. I mean, I think this is super feedback, from the community. And I think it's ultimately important that as programs are developed, there are buckets basically associated with each type so that that there is balance to keeping existing community members here who might not otherwise feel like they can afford to stay over the longer haul. At the same time, I think it is essential that we're creating new units for year-rounders who want to stay here over the long haul as well. And that can be, new construction as well as repurposing of existing inventory, but we have to have both.
Hey, Tucker. Tom?
Judy, thank you very much for that feedback. That was excellent. I'm sure the groups are very interesting. And I just wanted to say, as sort of a follow-up on the when we were setting this up with you, that the layer of relative anonymity with the groups was important. So moving into this potential community meeting with us is another opportunity for us to take the feedback we heard from you in the aggregate and then kind of piece that together, whereas then we can hear from specific folks and members of the trust and community members all at the same time. And so we get a bigger picture than just holding 1 or 2 forums, and then it's going to be the same 15 to 25 people that show up at every event like that. So I think doing this in sort of the more academic, kind of thoughtful, focus group methodology that you've done it in is a smart way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Vicky?
You're on mute, Vicky. Oh, there you are.
So Judy, thank you very much for doing this. It's very interesting to listen
was
to
fun.
the commentary, quite frankly. The one thing I think that you all may want to consider when you're starting to think about the program itself, based on some of Judy's comments that came back, was perhaps starting out with a simple program, not trying to grab all of the different groups and satisfy all of the different people's interests. For instance, maybe this isn't the time to start out with employers trying to participate in this program, but more to find a way to decide where you want to focus initially. What group of people do you want to try to grab to participate in this program initially? And then also in conjunction with that comes the idea of how do you monitor this program and enforce it? So if you keep it relatively simple at the beginning and see how that works, then you can always expand it and build on it. But I just want to caution you all to think about not going too big too fast and just trying to think about what you want to try to accomplish initially, and who to focus on. That's it.
Thank you, Vicky. That's good advice. Judy?
No, I just agree with what Vicky said. In fact, several of the interviewees said just that. Let's do something we think we can succeed with and keep it kind of simple in program design so everybody understands it. You can always build on it, but you want to build on a success, not a failure.
Awesome. So coming back to the question, does the 13th work as a community date? And then with the assumption that members will join the meeting on kind of a listening tour and clarification as needed. Does anybody have a struggle with that date? Seeing none, Vicky, I say book it.
Sorry, what time? I think, hold on, let me just look at my schedule real quick.
I think we were
Talking after the workday, Dave, sometime between 5 and 7 p.m. for.
I have I believe my next planning board meeting's on the 13th.
Yeah.
So
What time do you guys meet?
4:30 to midnight usually.
So,
But you guys
I mean-
go ahead without me. I'll watch it. I'll catch up and watch it. Like, by all means, if everyone can show up, there's no need to put it off for me.
I don't think we want to push it too much further. And
No, I
and
agree.
I know that Vicky's schedule, or excuse me, that Judy's schedule is, you know, full as she was talking about. So I think we should stick with the 13th.
I agree.
so Tucker, what do you need from me, if anything, like a flyer or something to promote this? How do you want to do this?
If there's something that you have or have in mind, that sure, that would be terrific. We definitely can promote it that way. I was going to ask, I guess just practically, do you want us to set this up as like a scheduled trust meeting and set it up through the town Zoom, or is this something that you want to control?
Well, where this is a community meeting, I think it's fine to do it through the trust.
Okay.
You know, I was trying to be careful on the smaller groups because I was going to tell people what you're telling me is going to be held in confidence, but you know, we're not going to identify you. But it's a community meeting. People are going to be self-identifying by virtue of the fact that they speak. If it's on my Zoom account, it's still going to be a community meeting. And I just think it's cleaner to say the trust is sponsoring this meeting.
But
Great.
you're running the meeting. Just to be clear.
Yes, yes,
I
sir.
I
will-
just want to be clear that you'll be managing and running the meeting.
I will run the meeting. I will happily
Okay.
run it.
Great.
And we're not supposed to, we're supposed to observe.
Yeah, unless I would just say, if something comes up and I obviously can't answer it because I'm over my head on something, it's better for someone to jump in and answer the question than have a silence. Silence makes people nervous. So if I can't answer a question, by God, feel free to jump in and respond. People will appreciate it.
I have a hard time imagining you'd be over your head.
No,
Me
I
too.
no, I certainly could be. And I think that, you know, just, you know what it's like when people don't get an answer immediately, it sort of makes them feel like, oh my God, there's something wrong. So just jump in and help at that point.
Yeah, we'll post the meeting so and everyone can speak and so forth.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Great.
Judy, are you going to talk at the beginning about some of what came out of these prior discussions?
Tell people that this is a sequel to a series of focus groups that folks had a chance to sign up for. We wanted to expand the audience. We're going to ask very similar questions. I don't know. That's a good question, Tucker. I wasn't planning to sort of give people a summary of what we already heard because I didn't want to stare what they said. But I do think there may be times when people, like if a lot of people agree on like the definition of year round, we might want to then say, you know, that's pretty consistent with what we heard in the focus groups. But I'd rather say that in response than set it up that way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. So I think we're off to the races.
Does that mean I can go on to my next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, do you need
Thank
me for
you.
anything else? No, it's fine. Do you need me for any other reason? Because I'm happy to stay on.
No, I think we're good. We're going to close this one and go into executive session.
Oh,
Basically.
okay. Well,
We have no more to cover with you. We'll see you on the.
Excellent.
Do we say 13th? 13th.
yes. Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Thanks, Judy.
Yes,
Thanks,
bye-bye.
Judy.
Bye.
So we'll close item 8 and go to 9 other business. So it looks like we're gonna have back-to-back meetings, the night of the 13th and the afternoon of the 14th. Seeing no reaction to that, we'll leave that where it is. Any other business? Yes, Vicky.
So I would recommend keeping that meeting on the 14th if possible. I know the closing is coming up for Vesper Lane at the end of the month. So I'm probably going to need a vote at that meeting in order to be able to close. So please.
Great.
Meeting, okay.
Excellent. Close other business, move to board comments. Are there any board comments? Seeing no one jump at board comments, we'll close that. Look to item 11, executive session. I'll look for a motion to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or real value of real property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of a public body. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion not to return to this regular meeting.
Great. Is there a second?
Second,
Second from Meg by roll call. Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Meg Browers.
aye.
And Brian Sullivan's and I. See you there.